Hey, I thought brewing was supposed to be all just fun and games and drinking beers. What's all this cleaning involved? So I think that's the secret people don't tell you when you start in brewing, is brewing involves a lot of cleaning. Today we're gonna look at cleaning some bottles, so maybe not the most fun and exciting. I found over kind of the COVID lockdown, I ended up having to give away a lot of bottles. I have a bunch of some swing top bottles like this that I would use to fill to take to a party or a club competition. I have a bunch of these little swing top bottles that work fine when I'm taking somewhere and just sharing beers. As I needed to drop off beers for exchanges, I needed a lot more 12-ounce bottles like this one. And I really like the looks of a nice clean bottle. You could potentially just use a bottle like this, leave the label on it, and it just would look a little, to me it looks a little shabby. So I like the look of a nice clean bottle. So I've got a handful of bottles here. Based on my experience, some bottles, I think this one I was gonna do some clear bottles so I could see some experimental. Based on just looking at these labels, I think they'll probably come right off with a little bit of water. I think the Saison DuPont ones do that as well, and Bell's I think as well, just with a little soaking. Those would come off. In my experience, these Port City ones have more of an adhesive on there that we're probably gonna have to work something on. I don't have any today, but there are some bottles that have a more of a plasticky label. And those ones, sometimes they have a really strong adhesive on them as well that you may need to try to clean off. But sometimes if you just get those warm with some warm water, it'll soften up that adhesive that's holding on that, and then you can just peel and those are some of the best ones, because then they're very easy. So what we're gonna do today, I've got a bucket. You can just soak these in your sink, in a bucket, whatever, a tub of water. What I'm gonna do is I've got some OxiClean that I'm gonna add in there, and I think either some OxiClean, I also use just dish detergent as well, PBW, something like that. That'll help kind of make the water a little bit more active, help it break down those labels. I found using this odorless mineral spirits for specific labels that have a gumminess to them, it works really well. You could probably use something like a goo removers, Goo Be Gone, whatever they're called, would work well for that. The other option is if you get those bottles that have a lot of adhesive that are a pain to remove, just toss them in the recycle bin and find some other ones. But we're gonna go ahead and get these soaking, and then we'll come back, let them soak for about an hour, and then see how the labels are. All right, got my bucket filling up with some warm water. I'm just gonna add, whatever, half scoop or so of that to the water. All right, I'm just gonna take my bottles, fill them with water so that they're sitting here. Let's see, I don't know how many we'll be able to get into this bucket. Just wanna fill the bucket up just to get above the rim of any labels. So we're gonna let those soak for about an hour, and then we can come back and see how it's doing. So I let the bottles soak for an hour in the water. So let's go ahead and dig in there and see what we got. Here, as it's kind of expected, these ones, label came right off. Two-hearted, very similar, come off, just got a little bit of some glue there. The Deschutes one came right off. Let's see, what else did we have in here? We had some Sierra Nevada. Those came off, but they left quite a bit of residue. We'll deal with that. What else did we have in here? We had some Saison DuPont ones, and those ones. So again, the mix, I think we're seeing a mix of what I would expect. Some like this one come right off and they're almost ready to go. Some like this one, which is a Sierra Nevada, came off, and this will come off pretty easy. So I wanted to jump in here real quick with another type of bottle that I often encounter. It's fall time, so it's time for pumpkin beers. This is Aleworks, a great brewery in Virginia. So often these type of labels are a little hard when you look at them. They look like they're going to be tough to get off. This one I just soaked in some warm water. Often you can just take the label and then peel it right off. It looks like there's a little bit of some sticky. So sometimes there's some adhesive you still need to take off. So these ones sometimes can vary a little bit. Sometimes you take the label off and they're pretty much good to go. Sometimes you peel the label off and you still need to, you either need to scrub off some adhesive, or sometimes you need to take some solvent to it to get those off. But I just wanted to jump with another type of label that I often see. And if you're getting some value out of this, I know it's a kind of a long video for a pretty boring topic, but make sure you hit that like button. Leave a comment below if there's any other types of bottles that you tend to encounter and any strategies that you have for cleaning those bottles. These Port City ones are kind of a typical one that have a little bit more of an aggressive adhesive, so we'll have to try to deal with those ones. So my first line of attack for bottles like this is just something that you can use to scrape. I typically use like a butter knife, and then also just kind of an old scrubby. In this case, this guy is ready to go. Just take a sponge, get off any residual, if there's a little bit on there, and then it's ready. We've got to make sure we wash that out. In the case of this, sometimes you'll get a label that sticks on a little bit, and that's where I'll take the knife and get it off. And it may work well for this. So we've got just some residual adhesive on there. If we let this soak longer, it may come right off. I'll go ahead and scrape a little bit of it off, and then I think probably, yeah. So with this scrubber, it's coming right off. So it's looking good. So this bottle, just a little bit of scrubbing, it'll be good to go. So if we're looking at those Port City ones, again, these are the kind of bottles, sometimes you can figure out either, it's too much of a hassle, I'm gonna throw them in the recycle bin. I might let these soak a little longer. I'm not sure it'll do, but you can notice those have a little bit of a plasticky coating on them, which has really kind of prevented from getting in there. So what I'm gonna do with this, for demonstration today, I'm gonna go ahead and try to scrape off what I can here, maybe let them soak a little bit longer. And then we'll break out the heavy duty, break out some mineral spirits, and we'll see if that will help us take off those labels. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe I'll just let these, I'll try to give these a little bit of scraping and then maybe let them soak for a little bit longer. So one thing I noticed with these specific bottles, and I haven't seen this a lot, but if I notice it's got a plasticky coating on it. So I think if I pull off that plastic coating, it's going to soften up some of this a little bit easier, so I'll have to do less scraping. So I'm going to try that with these bottles, and then I'm going to put them back in. All right, so I've let the Port City bottles soak a little bit longer. So the first batch, I went ahead and gave them a good rinse to make sure I got any soap. They were bottles that had been cleaned beforehand, and then I've turned them they're just sitting in my dishwasher upside down, draining. I went ahead and put some gloves on, partially because we may be using some mineral spirits, partially just because I find the OxiClean does dry my hands out quite a bit. So like I said, there was a little bit of a plastic layer on these ones, so we went ahead and took that off. So now we can definitely see that the main body of the label is coming off very easy now, but there's this underlying glue, and even if we take this and scrub it, it's really not gonna come off. So let me go ahead and do that initial scraping to get the majority of the label off these. So we did some rough scraping on those bottles, and you can see sometimes the adhesive comes off okay, like this specific bottle, it seems like it's working okay. Some of them it's definitely, but it's a lot of work to get that off. It's a sticky label. I've tried a couple things, say like WD-40 or some alcohol. Didn't seem to be effective. The thing that I found working with just some odorless mineral spirits that I had around. This is not gonna be a lecture on safety related to odorless mineral spirits. It is flammable. The rags are flammable. It's not very, so you definitely want to be working in a well-ventilated environment. Going outside would not be a bad idea, but we're not using very much of it here, so I'm not too worried. I do have some gloves on. I'm just going to dampen this cloth, and then we'll see when we take these bottles, just getting a little bit of that on there. You know, it might help to just move from bottle to bottle, let it soak a little bit. But you can see how that's really dissolving that glue on there. Hopefully you can see that. Like I said, I think there's probably some solvents like the Gooby Gone type stuff, which are probably similar in nature and how they will work. But as it soaks in a little bit, it definitely works to dissolve that. Yeah, it's just with a little bit of scrubbing. This one's coming off pretty good. So you can see this one's looking pretty close to being good to go. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish off the rest of those, and then I'll come back and we're just gonna wash these off. All right, so with just a little bit of extra work, we're able to save those bottles that had the sticky glue on them. So they all look pretty good. So next step I'm gonna do, make sure one, this rag that's soaked with mineral spirits is flammable, so be careful with that. I'm going to take that out and dispose of it properly. I'm going to go ahead and rinse these off and then go ahead and wash them with some soapy water just to kind of get whatever's on the outside cleaned off. That's a little slippery. Okay, with the combination of the oil and the gloves, just mix up a little bit of OxyClean solution, and then I'll go ahead and okay, so I'm going to call those good. I'm going to go ahead and take them all, give them a good rinse off, and then let them dry. All right, so there we are. We've got 11 bottles all cleaned, looking pretty. These are those ones with the tough label on them. So they look pretty decent. We'll just let them sit there for a while and dry.